they're going to take revenge on you because you've left them there and they've mutated, or that sense of also, it's weird because it's like that you feel a guilt because they're from a dried up slaughterhouse town, and that sense of feeling somehow culpable for that, in some way, where it's like you somehow contributed to their thing closing, and then there they are waiting for you. I don't know. There's something really deeply scary about that film.
It kind of goes hand in hand with Wytches, where anybody from reading it, anybody could pledge anybody.
Mm-hmm.
It seems. So you don't know. One minute you could be happy-go-lucky getting ice cream, and then the next morning you're gone.
Yeah.
Because somebody just said, I want a few more years onto my life. I'm gonna pledge Panda. Screw her. I'm pledging her. And that has a real scariness to it, because it's kind of like you don't know if you don't know nothing about these people. It's out of your hands.
Yeah, and it could be anybody that does it to you. So that was what I really love about that book, is that it has the kind of. I knew that when I thought of it, it was going to have legs for me, because it was the kind of horror that I like, even if it's not necessarily. I don't know. I don't know if it's for everybody, but I love the idea that you have a monster in it that's scary, but that's scary doubly because they really only act on human cruelty. So they'll only come after people that have been given to them, because those people then go missing without a lot of fanfare. Because if you're pledged, it sort of means that the people that pledge you have sort of taken care to make sure that they're going to also slip this material, this tincture, to the people that are left, if they're going to miss the person, that they won't remember the person afterwards. So there's this kind of benzo, this natural sort of amnesiac that the Wytches give you, so that if your kid goes missing, you won't remember you had a kid if you weren't part of that pledge. So for me, there's something really terrifying just about that, just the paranoia, because the creatures are scary, but what's scarier is your neighbors, the people that could do that to you if you're not careful. So, and also the way that it allows, it allows for me, for kind of exploration of some of the darker, I think, reasons you would, as somebody, really getting into it with Jock and saying, well, because he's like, well, who, no one would pledge anyone. I'm like, really? Because what if you have some neighbor that's just awful, who just beats his animals, beats his kids or whatever, terrible person, and your kid has cancer? You don't think that you would pledge that person maybe to cure your kid? You know what I mean? And so you start getting in these conversations like that, where it gets, well, what if it was just really to add some years to your life, and you can kind of bend it in a way where you think, well, maybe I would do that, maybe I would, and then it gets really fun.
But yeah, it is one of those questions. It's like I watched a movie called Hunger. It's a horror film on Netflix about people who are put in this well. I think I talked about it a couple of episodes ago. In this well, and they're said the human body can live 30 days without food. But what would you do to survive? And there's like 5 people in this well, and it turns into, what are these people willing to do to survive with this hunger that they're getting after so many days?
Mm-hmm.
And you never think about it until you are put in that situation. And like you said with Jock, I know Panda's a huge fan of Jock's artwork, right, Panda?
Yeah. Whenever you two announced this series, I was like super excited, because it's like he's one of my favorite artists in comics, and then like you're one of my favorite like writers. So like to put you two together was like my favorite.
Oh yeah, right. Well, I didn't know Jock when I got Detective. What happened was they called me in, and I was supposed to do the backups. I had pitched these backups when I was at C2E2, and I had met with Jeff Johns and Dan DiDio and Jim Lee, and I was terrified. I didn't know any of them, and pitched this backup about Gordon. And I remember Dan being like, I don't understand. It's about Gordon, and I'm like, yeah, it's about Gordon and his son. And he was like, well, what's going to be on the cover? It's going to be like dusty old files and whatever. And I was like, yes, that sounds great. But they were very kind to let me do it. And then what happened was Paul Dini, I guess, who was doing the book at the time, had other obligations, and so Mike Marks called me in and was like, do you want to take all of Detective, and you'd have it for 10 to 12 issues? And I was terrified. And he was like, but it's great news. You're going to have Mark Bagley is on the book, and and I love him. He's terrific, but I knew that he wouldn't be right for the story that I wanted to do. And I asked if I could use Jock, and I didn't know him. I just knew his work, but I had heard through Vertigo that he was pretty approachable, and through Will Dennis, and they were like, sure. Mike Martz basically, I think, was kind of daring me to get him, where he was like, because Jock has a ton of movie work. He does a lot of concept art. So they were sort of like, go to San Diego, and if you can get him, sure, you can use him. But I don't think anyone thought that he would do it. And then I met him in San Diego, and we went out for a beer, and I was super nervous. I was like, I'd never met him before. And he's incredibly personable. He's just like this big, he's got this kind of premature gray hair. He's big smile, super nice guy. He was like, let's go out for a pint. And so we went into the Gaslight and had a beer. And I remember being like, if I don't keep up with this guy with beer, he's just going to think I'm a total pussy, and he's not going to want to do detective with me. And so we were drinking, and I was like, oh God, he's much bigger than I am. He's like, 6'3" or whatever. And I'm like, drinking. And I remember getting like more and more enthusiastic and trying to explain like James Jr. this, and Gotham is so, transformative, and it means this. And at the end he was like, you know what? I like it. Let's do it. And I was like, yes. And I literally went back to the hotel, and I remember typing to Mike Martz and being like, guess what, Martz? I was like, Jock is in. And I fell asleep like with my hand like on the keyboard, passed out. I was so exhausted and drunk. And then, but literally he did it. And then we had such a good time working on that all year long. I mean, he taught me a ton also about writing, because I was still really green. I'm still green now, but I mean, I was green then, and he really walked me through a lot. He's a great mentor. He was sort of like, if you want to do this sequence, like Dick jumping off the, roof and falling through 2 pages, you don't want to do it. You don't want to do it vertically. You want to do it horizontally, do it in an arc, and all kinds of stuff like that. He was constantly helping me understand visual storytelling, and now he is too with Wytches. But it's nice to kind of come back when I'm a little bit more confident, and he has to do a little bit less of the heavy lifting with me, I think. He's proud of me. It's nice. We've stayed really good friends.
So is it that learning curve? Like, do you just, when you first get the gig at either Marvel or DC, does it just a constant panic that at first when you get like, I really have to produce here, and I really have to get my stuff together over here, or I'm out? Did you feel that kind of stress at the early days of just, you just have to impress right out of the gate?
I feel it now. I'm always terrified, dude. I feel really, but yes, I mean, the scariest moment, the 2 scariest, there are a few moments, so if I had to rank them, I think the first one was, Detective was scary, but it wasn't that scary because I was cushioned by a few things in the way that, I mean, I was terrified that I was going to fuck it up, but I mean, my excitement was that I was using people I loved. Like, I knew that, and Grant was on Batman too, so the exciting thing was like, Grant was the supernova, no one was going to pay attention to me, and that was exciting. I was like, no one is going to notice me. I can be as weird as I want because Grant is the superstar and I'm in the shadows, and that's the way I was so happy about that. So there wasn't the same pressure, and then working with Jock and Francesco, I had gotten to know them before we began, after I met Jock and after I met Francesco. I've always, the one thing I would say, I feel I came in with a good sense of, I mean, because there's a lot of things I think I suck at, but the one thing I do feel very proud of in terms of hitting the ground running with a certain attitude is that coming from prose, which for me I liked, but I was always extremely isolating and lonely. I didn't realize how much I had trouble with that aspect of it psychologically until I moved into comics. But once I was in comics, I was like, if you're on a team, it's awesome. You talk all day to these people and you're making something together. I know it sounds really hokey, but like, I talk to Greg Capullo every day. We email and go back and forth multiple times a day, and Jock multiple times a day, and Raphael multiple times a day. Just, would you like this page? Do you want whatever? And you're making something, that feels dynamic when you do that. And anyway, so getting on Detective, the fun was, I remember talking to Francesco and Jock together and sending an email and being like, I know some because a lot of people, they don't like to talk to each other that much, or the company doesn't like you to talk that much to your artists. They used to not. I don't know if it's different now, but I mean, there was a sense, I think, initially, sometimes, with different, depending on the editor, that you keep the editor as the buffer between the artist and the writer, and that's a really healthy thing in some ways. Like if I have a problem with somebody or they have a problem with me, it's more problematic to be in touch with each other because what if you get into a fight and don't want to work together? Then the editor has a problem on their hands. So generally, the editor is the go-between. But me, maybe I was just naive, but I was like emailing them immediately, being like, "So we're a team. Let's just talk amongst ourselves constantly, and anything that you guys want me to do differently, let me know. If there's anything I think I have ideas for your stuff, I'll let you know." And so we became really close really fast. And the good thing about that too, on top of just getting to know the people and making friends in a lonely profession, is that comic companies, like, they'll come at you with notes that suck sometimes, or big notes, or notes that will be a grenade in your story. And I'm pretty nimble, I think, about, or flexible about, trying to absorb what they want and do what they want, knowing as long as I can keep the story about what it's about, that's okay. But there are notes sometimes where it changes what it's about, and in those cases, you need your artists around you to be like, "We're not doing that, any of us," And if you try and make us do that, we all leave together. And that to me it's great. Those are scary things, but they're also really, really inspiring when that happens too, because you realize it's their book and they can kick you off, like they own the book, but it is kind of your book too, in a way,
Right.
that you're making it as a team, and they can't break you apart, And so there have always been moments like that, on everything.
Yeah.
There.
And I think a good example, I think, is I think we can talk about it. If not, just tell me, hey, shut the fuck up.
Sure.
When they when they decided to put the price up on Batman.
Mm-hmm.
And everybody, I mean, you saw it, just like we saw it. The social media comic book community went nuts.
Yeah, I woke up to it.
But you and Greg, from what we saw, fought for the price of Batman, and we thank you so much for that. Because we love Batman, and when we saw that, we realized how much you care about what the comic book fans, are about. And then that's something that I know Chief Fan and I talked at length about.
Thanks. I appreciate that. Because we woke up to that news the same way everybody did, and it was very upsetting, because that stuff, the thing is, for us, I understand, and look, in retrospect, I think people, you can understand why they would have wanted to milk the story, knowing that here is DC's thinking about it, and if this is too much like sausage making, and boring, let me know, but their thinking was they wanted to announce that it was the Joker and it was the return of the Joker at San Diego, and have the story not be a surprise was the way because you'd make a lot more money knowing that it was the Joker ahead. And I was really adamant about that I thought that was a total mistake, and that it was just going to be beating a dead horse to be like, it's a Joker again, and we're doing that again. And I knew that if I could Trojan horse it in, though, and surprise people, I thought the story would just be a lot. It would get off on the right foot, and it would be if we could pull it off, I felt like it would set the story in motion in a way that would be much truer to what it was about than this hype about the Joker, because Batman doesn't see him coming, and if we all see him coming in some way, it kind of ruins the effect of the issue, or just the story itself. And so that was a big fight internally. I mean, but it's not a fight like they're evil people and they're a big corporation and you're some underdog. I mean, they make sense. It's in the way that they're saying, look.
Yeah, well, they're a business. They want to turn a profit.
And they're saying you're killing the idea of this being a big event because you're just billing it as this blank thing that's Endgame and no one knows what it is. We're going to lose sales. We can't go out and promote it. Can we at least hike the price? And they didn't ask that at all. And Greg and I really, literally, I woke up to my Twitter feed like screaming about it, and I was like, "What the hell is this?" But I'm saying that logic makes sense. And so when I got on the phone with them, it wasn't like, "You assholes, you raised the price and didn't tell us." And it was like, "Look, I understand why you would have done this. because they basically were like, look, you're the one that wanted to do it. You're the one that wanted to do it as a surprise. We're taking a hit financially for that.